Hey, what's going guys? Welcome back to my channel. Now in this video we'll be discussing about that how you create the procedural mountains that you can see on your screen. Now as this is the second part, we'll be discussing about that how we actually created them using geometry nodes. And by this completely procedural, meaning you can change the size, the resolution, everything like that. So in the first part we discussed about the materials, which is also completely procedural by the way, so make sure to check it out before coming to this episode. So let's get started with today's tutorial. So now once you're in the Blender window, let's just get started at how I created this whole scene inside of Blender using geometry nodes. First of all, we have a simple grid, and as you can see here, we can change the resolution, the size, which makes it completely procedural. And for this, I would recommend you to put the size at 2000 or 2500. And for the final render, I put the size. I'm talking about the resolution, which is also known as the vertices X and Y. So in the final render, I put it at 4000. I think that's a bit overkill, but 2500 or 2000 should look pretty great and pretty similar to 4000. Of course, you won't get that type of details, but it will be pretty similar. So I would just recommend you to put it to 2000 or 2500. I'm leaving it to 512 right now because as I'm recording, I need my blend to be smooth, but in the final render, you must increase it, of course. Next up, we have the set material node, and basically what it does is, as you would have expected, it just basically sets a material onto the model. And then we have added in a set shade smooth, and it just shades out the normal so it looks a tiny bit better. And then we have a set position node, and then we have the output. Now this setup is the main thing which is going into the set position node and gives us this kind of displacement. So what is going on over here? So as you can see, this is pretty confusing when you see it at the first sight, but if you just break it down, it's pretty simple at its core. So let's get started. First of all, these two value nodes control the scale and the render and the seed of all of the Warner textures. So put these aside, and these can be used to control them. So for the top one is used to control, I've already forgot. Yes, it is used to control the randomness or the different types of seed, and the bottom one is used to control the scale of the whole texture. So basically the basic concept is we are taking a 2D texture, what do we say, that black and white texture, so that Blender can recognize, or any 3D software can recognize it, and it just displaces it onto our grid, and it creates this kind of result. So as you can see here, this adds a lake, a plain area, and the mountains. So let's break it down. So first of all, we have two textures. For number one, we have a noise texture, then number two, we have a Voronoi texture. So basically, if you just have the noise texture, it will already give us a pretty nice result for a mountain, but we have added in the Voronoi texture so that we can get those sharp edges. Yeah, as you can see here, we can get those sharp edges. This is possible through Voronoi texture, and I've set the randomness to 1. Like for example, if I just decrease it, as you can see, this is how it looks, and it looks pretty uniform. But that's not what you want, because nature is pretty random, and including the mountains. So I've just set it to 1. Now you can even set it to 2 if you would like, but I think that 1 looks pretty great. And then we are just combining it using a mix color node. So I just added in a mix color node, and then I just put the Voronoi texture in the A socket and the noise texture in the B socket. And then what we have going on is the Voronoi texture, and we have this thing going on again, and then we have another noise texture and another Voronoi texture. Then I've combined them again, so basically I've duplicated this, and then I've ran it through a color ramp, this part which I duplicated, and then I ran it through a color ramp, and then I ran it through two mix RGB, two mix colors, and then I placed it, connected it to the B socket of the second one, and then I connected this noise texture, which is just a noise texture without yes, it's just a noise texture, and I've connected this to the first mix RGB node, and then I've connected this whole part to the A socket of this mix color node, and then I've connected it into the A socket of the second one. So I hope this makes sense, and it is making it pretty clear. And then for the factor, I've just used this gradient mask, so we can determine that where are these noise texture going to be displaced. So basically what these extra ones, extra noise textures and more noise texture do, basically as you can see here, the bottom layer is a bit more noisy and a bit more different than the top layers. It just adds a bit more variation and a bit more realism to the whole system. So that is what the gradient texture is being used for. It is just telling Blender that hey, at a certain spot just stop and just use for example this part, and then after that use this part. So it is being, so this part, these 4 nodes are being, so these 5 nodes are being used in the bottom, and they also create this type of result as you can see, and they are also being, and this part is being used at the top, which gives us these nice sharp edges at the mountain, for the mountains, which looks pretty realistic and pretty great. And then we have run it through a separate XYZ, so it only affects on the Z-axis. And then we have used an RGB curve. As you can see, this RGB curve is very important, because if we just change it, for example, as you can see it just gives us a very different result. So you can just play around with this as accordingly to your liking, and this can give you a pretty nice result pretty often. So for example, if I just do this, as you can see, like this isn't nice, but you get the point. You can change many things using this. If you just increase it a bit, and you can see you can increase the elevation and everything like that. But to create this lake and this whole plain area and then the mountains, this is the RGB curve that I chose. And then we have combined the XYZ again, and then, so that for example, if we just move it, we have 3 values in the set position node. We have combined it again so that it can fill up all 3 of these. So basically we just it just connects to the offset and then to the group output, and it gives us this result. So as I mentioned before, this looked pretty complicated and pretty confusing at the first sight, but once you started to break it down, then it is pretty clear, and it is pretty simple if you get the core idea of it. So I hope this had made a bit more clear that how I created this whole scene inside of Blender. But of course, geometry nodes are pretty hard and you need to practice them to master them. So without further ado, we will meet in the next one. See ya.